few months ago, we talked about the importance of owning your energy before you own your day. It was episode 91 during the Mojo Move series. And we talked about how your mindset, emotional state, and your vibration set the tone for everything that follows. And today, I want to take it a step further. I actually want to talk about how you can create a plan to execute on that. And I think that it will give you the systems and the habits today that can help you protect your focus and ultimately increase your productivity and maybe even elevate your leadership. So, before you decide that this episode might not be for you because you're thinking, I'm not a morning person, I just want you to stay with me because that is really not what this is about. It's about understanding that before you even get out of bed, you have the ability to really control your day. And I want you to really understand how taking ownership for how you want your day to flow is all up to you. And because here's the truth, I believe that how you start your day is how you'll spend your day. So I think that our mornings do matter. And it's okay if you don't think you're a morning person. Maybe I can give you a new way of looking at it. So here's what I've learned. And it's not really from theory or research, it's honestly from my own experience. So I'll tell you that most days I start my day at 5 a.m. And that has been my routine for a very long time. And I think it started years ago when I was raising my children because it gave me a little quiet time before everybody got up. It gave me an opportunity to sit quietly with my coffee and do whatever I needed to do to get my day started. And now my morning routine looks a little different, but I do get up early and still enjoy having the house to myself. And usually for the first hour, my routine consists of prayer, meditation, reading, some journaling. I also enjoy doing some stretching or yoga. And that really helps me feel ready for the day. And I feel like when I have that routine in place, I'm set up to have one of my best days. The reason for that, I feel, is because I'm not rushing. I'm not jumping out of bed with some sort of panic or frenzy. I am getting up without feeling like I'm reacting to anything or anyone. And I'm able to start my day in a way that supports me. And so I do feel the difference on days like that. I can feel the rise in my energy. I feel like on those days I have better focus. I think that leads to having more confidence. I feel better prepared for the day. And I know that if I can raise my vibration before I even walk out the door, that energy can stay with me all day long. And so it affects and kind of shows up, throughout the day in my conversations, my decision making, the way I'm connecting with people. And I feel like it seems to attract people to me as well. On those days when I can start with that morning routine, I feel like it creates this vibration around me where other people feel drawn to me or attracted to me. And I think that brings on different opportunities. So I'm operating from a place of alignment instead of chaos. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you because I know that I'm not alone in that. I know that many of you probably have your own morning routine or have spent some time thinking about this or reading about this, hearing about this maybe on a podcast or two. And the truth is, I think if we can create some sacred space around our mornings, then we allow ourselves to connect inwardly. And I think before we start giving parts of ourselves to the world, before we start giving our energy to whatever it is that we need to do today, we're just giving ourselves an opportunity to say good morning to our inner self. And I think if your first act of the day could be about you, it's a great act of self-love. And the contrast could be that, if your first act of the day is checking emails and reacting to messages or scrolling through social media or even watching the news or listening to the news before your feet even hit the floor, then you're basically handing your mental state over to someone else. And you're starting to pour into your brain, your mind, outside messaging before you even have an opportunity to check in with yourself. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you and hopefully help you to take a step back and identify where you would like to spend the first hour of your morning. And if you feel like you could have some real progress in this area, if you feel like you want to get out of the chaotic loop that you could be in right now, then that's what I would like to help you with today. If we want to call your morning the chaos loop, then let's get out of this cycle of reacting and feeling overwhelmed and ultimately possibly even beginning the idea or sense of burnout before we even get out the door. So, what is the antidote to chaos? It's clarity. I'll say that again. The antidote to chaos is always clarity. And so, I want to help you clear up some of your thoughts and really reclaim your morning. So this is also proven in research. You know, you don't have to take my word for it, guys. You can do a lot of research and read up on this. And what research has shown us is that it's not just about feeling good, which listen, let's not underrate that. Feeling good is important, but it is really about helping us to live our best life and ultimately perform better at anything that we might be doing. So I just want to share with you some notes I have here. There's a Harvard study by biologist Christopher Randler, and he found that people who wake earlier tend to be more proactive. They anticipate challenges and act before problems arise. So, guys, that's a superpower right there. That's a leadership superpower. That's a super achiever boss superpower. And neuroscience also tells us that our brains are most alert, focused, and creative within the first few hours after waking. I'm just going to say, if you think you're not a morning person, I might want to debunk that for you because science is saying that our brains are most alert, focused, and creative within the first few hours after waking. Might just be that you're not conscious of that or connected to that. So, listen, if that is true, then during that time, your willpower is higher and distractions could be lower. So that's why those first few hours of the day are when we should be putting time on our 20%, right? Our big rocks, our number one priorities, because that's when we have the most brain power. That's when we're most creative and focused. So, another study by Dr. Andrew Herberman at Stanford shares that early morning light within an hour of waking anchors your circadian rhythm, boosts alertness, and improves sleep quality later. So, when you design your mornings right, your nights might get better too. And I think that's why there's also a lot of research out by the Sleep Foundation, and they've reported that people with earlier wake times often experience better mental health, more stable moods, and higher productivity overall. So, it sounds to me the research is pointing to the earlier you rise with intentionality, the more leverage you might create across your entire day. So, something to think about. And listen, it doesn't mean that if you currently get up at 7, you're going to suddenly get up at 5. Maybe you start the process where you get up 30 minutes earlier and allow your body to adjust. And then maybe you get up another 30 minutes earlier after a couple of weeks. But I do believe that early rising does a lot of positive things for all of us. And that's why when I talk about owning your morning, here's what I really mean by that. I think that number one, it's going to protect your attention. It's going to help you by starting your day early. It's going to help you to really, like I said, bring the focus inward, to really set up some boundaries, right, for yourself before the world demands anything else from you. I think if you could have that time for yourself and reserve your sharpest energy for you to create some time and space around thinking, planning, reflecting, meditating, I believe that you will find the enlightenment, will find the creativity and inspiration for a lot of the things that you want to accomplish. It also creates white space. That's something I've talked a little bit about in the last few weeks, is the value of having some white space on your calendar. In other words, not running from one activity to the next or one appointment to the next, giving yourself some time and space in between for even just for downtime. It also, white space is important for you to be able to have time to reflect, time to be creative and plan, to strategize. So think about it. If you start your day, in the first hour of your day is about you and not social media, not working, not checking emails, not TV, but really to spend some time reading, meditating, praying, writing, like I said, moving the body, then you're creating white space right from the start. And that quiet time in the morning where you're starting to think and create and plan and reflect, you start to see the benefits of that. And I think it could help you create more white space later in your calendar as well. And I also believe that this concept of rising early and having this first, at least first hour of the day, creates some momentum, right? It builds momentum around how you want your day to flow. And I think that's super huge, as I've said to you from the beginning of this conversation. Psychologists actually have a name for this. They call it the fresh start effect. The fresh start effect, which just very simply means that when you start to experience some small wins. So if you're really feeling your nervous system is in control and you're feeling really pleased with yourself that you had this time to yourself in the first hour of the morning, then that small win starts to, build momentum, build energy, build confidence, and that just continues throughout the day. So you can actually create a foundation and have that stack for you throughout the day. So that's another reason why I think there's another benefit to early rising. And then finally, as I said to you earlier, it creates a sense of grounding. It creates a sense of being in control. It's intentional. I use the word chaos, but really think about it. For some of us, some of our mornings may seem very chaotic. If you're jumping out of bed and you're hitting the snooze button a few times and you're jumping out of bed with a frenzy because you got to hurry up and get ready and get out the door, and you have no time to think, no time to feel grounded, no time to do, the things that might help you prepare for your day, then you're starting in this chaotic state. And I think that becomes how you live the rest of the day and starts to shape your identity. You start to show up in this world as someone who always has some frayed edges. So I think that the benefit of having this first hour planned out for you can also put you back in the driver's seat of your own life. It helps you feel in control. Let's just take a moment now that you've got some information about the benefits of this, as a lot of people call it, the miracle morning, this first hour of the day. I just want you to picture what that looks like for you. I described my ideal morning, but that may not be what's right for you. It could be very different for you. So I just want you to think about that. And if you have to come back to this podcast because you're driving, I don't want you to get too distracted right now, but I do want you to have the opportunity to design what that morning will look like for you. So what leaves you feeling energized, clear, focused? Maybe it is some of the same things that I find myself practicing in the morning, or maybe it's something else like taking a walk. So you get to decide what it looks like for you, and you get to decide what works for you. And I think that's really important. And you have to consider not just what is in the doing, but what is in the effect of the activity. So what will nourish you, body, mind, and spirit, truthfully. So then once you're clear about that, just build it out. What does it look like? And I think it starts with actually what you do the night before. I know for a lot of us who are in business and leadership, we are familiar with a concept known as reverse engineering, which means simply we have a goal in mind and we sort of work backwards from that to create the steps so that we can figure out what is the starting point so that then we can hit the goal. You've spent some time thinking about what your ideal morning looks like. Let's reverse engineer it and let's start actually the night before. And I want you to think about your sleep patterns. I want you to consider if your bedroom truly supports you in a way. Again, I'll just share for me, my bedroom has to be dark. My bedroom has to be a little cool. I like it on the chilly side in my room. I'd rather have an extra blanket on the bed than be hot. And research has shown too that when the temperature is lower, we actually get a better night's sleep. So just ask yourself, is your room set up in a way that supports you? If you have your phone, tablet, or laptop near your nightstand and you're tempted to look at that before bed, is that serving the purpose of having a restful night's sleep and a really powerful morning start? So you might have to make some decisions about that too. So just take a look at, your environment and then examine, what time do you go to bed at night? And what does the last hour of your day look like? If the last hour of your day is spent watching TV, being on electronics, and having your brain really working hard, does it affect your sleep pattern? Does it help you, or does it get in the way of you falling asleep quickly? And just those are things that you have to examine. And I think for all of us, it's unique and different. But I will say, I try to quiet my mind and I try to avoid having a lot of stimulation right before bed. And then when I do get into bed, for me, sometimes I like to meditate again or pray and just sort of quiet down my mind. So that is another way for you to start planning for a great day, is to think about how you're ending the night before. And then, like I had said a little while ago, just start small. If this is really, like, if this is inspiring you, but it's very different than how you're currently set up with your routine, don't think you have to overhaul it all in one shot. You may have to just start small and make some small changes. Like I said, maybe you're just going to wake up 30 minutes earlier. Maybe you're going to move your bedtime back 30 minutes, whatever it is. And then, if you are new to this concept of creating a morning routine, just start simple. Create something that doesn't feel overwhelming, and put in a couple of things, or maybe one activity that just feels calming to you. And maybe it's choosing a certain chair or corner of your home where you're going to have your coffee in the morning. And maybe part of your ritual will be to light a candle or put on some soft music. I do that on some mornings too. Whatever it is, and again, if this is a radical new idea, just start with something small. Don't make it feel like you have to go from 0 to 60 overnight. And then I also want to say, similar to what we talked about in preparing your bedroom and setting up your environment, think about that morning environment too, right? Create a space where you will avoid distractions or friction, so that you really can have that time to really feel like you're owning that first hour. And the last thing I'll say this too, if you miss a day, like my morning routine is what I described most days, but not every day. And so sometimes I have different things I need to do in the morning, and that's okay. I don't make myself feel guilty about it. I don't feel like I have to be perfect with this. I know that when I practice my morning routine on most days, it's creating a huge benefit for me. And that's great. That's enough for me. So don't feel like if you miss a day that you've failed at something. That this is not about creating more pressure. This is about doing just the opposite, relieving the steam valve, right? So I just want to say, if you missed something, just reset and do it again. So here is the wind up for you, my friends. When you really take control of your morning, and especially you have this intention about how you spend that first hour, what starts to happen is pretty miraculous. And I want to talk a little bit about what can change when you really do this on a consistent basis. I think if you could create this experiment and you could be relatively consistent, because like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if you could be relatively consistent for 4 to 6 weeks, you will gain an extra 2 to 3 days in time, because you're going to see how you're gaining hours daily of productivity, of better decision making. You're going to give yourself this, ability to feel grounded, dial down your nervous system. So it will give you time back. And I know that that sounds kind of crazy, because there's only 24 hours in a day and 7 days in a week. However, I know a lot of times we joke about, oh God, I need more hours in a day. You don't really need more hours in a day. You just need to understand how to use those hours differently. And that's what will start to happen for you, because you're going to live by design, not by default. You're going to calm the chaos and you're going to feel more in control. And so, really, over a short period of time, it's going to feel like you're giving yourself time back, like you're giving yourself hours and days back. And again, if you feel like you're not a morning person, or if you feel like, oh gosh, there's no way I could go to bed earlier, there's no way I could get up earlier, listen, give yourself a benefit of the doubt. I think you're more resilient than you give yourself credit for. And I think that we're more adaptable as human beings than we realize. And so if you could just understand that maybe at times those statements could be true, but they don't need to be true of you every day. I think sometimes we just label ourselves and assume things about ourselves. And I want you to know that you are more fluid than that. You know, your identity is not based on your practices. Your identity could be really rooted in some things that are much deeper than that. Here's why I say that, because if you really got real with yourself, if you just change some of your habits, you might find that then the new activity or the new habit you create suddenly supports your concept of getting up early or going to bed a little bit earlier. And you might find that suddenly the morning is your friend and you can really create some new habits and build some new experiences on that and new results. The more you try it, the easier it gets. And suddenly that's how you build a new habit. So I think that, again, research has shown that our mind and our body is very resilient. And within a few days, it starts to make the adjustments. And it's not like you're going to find it difficult to adapt, because within a week or so, it's going to seem a lot more normal. So I just want you to give yourself an opportunity to consider this and try it, because the clarity you gain will outweigh any of the early fatigue that you might feel. And I think that is huge. So, listen, before we wrap this up, I'm going to give you a couple journal prompts. I want to give you some things to consider, take some time to think about this and reflect on this, because I know that when we feel bought into something, when we see the value, when we feel the motivation, then we're a lot more excited about it and willing to do it. So I want to give you a couple of questions to ask yourself before you decide one way or the other on this topic. So here's the first question. Again, we're going to put in the show notes for you so you can go back to it, and it'll become part of, our Monday Morning Mojo journal, by the way, which we can also make sure you can get a copy of. So here's the first question I'm going to ask myself. If I had 1 full hour each morning to myself, how would I use it? So basically, design your hour and ask yourself not only how you would use that hour, but what could you gain from that? The second thing I would ask myself is, what is my why? What is my why for protecting my morning? So in other words, yes, what would you gain from it? But go deeper on it. What would really start to change in your mindset, your energy, in your reaction to people and things happening throughout the day? That's a great question. And then what friction keeps you from starting your day with intentionality? If you're feeling like, I don't know, this wouldn't work for me, what's holding you back? Why do you think that's true? And then finally, who would you start to become over some short few weeks of doing this? If you could have this different morning routine, how do you think it would change you? Who do you think you would start to become in the process of it? And, taking some time to ask those questions could reveal a lot to you. So, again, when you own your morning, you own your day. And when you own your day, you start owning your life. And that's really what this is about, is understanding that this is your one life to live, and you shouldn't be giving away pieces of yourself and your energy to anyone in any way. And that if you could just have that first hour to feel centered, to go inward, to express gratitude, to connect with the divine, to plan a little of what you want out of your day, then you're really creating your own dance that we call life. You're the author of your own story. And so I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to try this for 30 days. I'm going to ask you to commit to waking up with intention, waking up and really designing the first 60 minutes to give you something, to fill your cup, to help you. And I want you to notice how your energy shifts. And I want you to pay attention to how opportunities start showing up, to how things start falling into place more. I think you're going to find that things feel easier over a short period of time. Yes, I'm telling you. So, and I want to hear from you. I want to know if you do plug into my challenge. I want to know how you feel after 30 days. I want to know how it's working for you. And of course, if today's episode resonated with you, I want you to not only share your routine with me, but share it with someone else. Inspire someone that you work with or that, you're friends with or your partner, anyone to do it with you, and have them listen to this episode and let them get on the challenge with you. Do it together for 30 days, which could be fun. And then always tag me on social media if you want to share your story so I can see it. Because I really do. I love to hear from you. I really appreciate getting a lot of feedback, which I do pretty much daily from people who are listening to the podcast, and that's great. So let me know how it's working for you. I always love to hear what's changing inside of you. And I just appreciate it. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week.